how do I say this? He would call me from wherever he was, right? And he'd always be drunk, like really
Right.
drunk, or he'd be later on. I found out it was cocaine, but
Right.
and this is totally confidential. So, anyways, it just sooner enough, my friends are like, Danny, he's calling everybody now, and I didn't know what to do because I don't like giving up on people. I
Right.
had this thing ever since I lost Jason when he committed suicide. I was like, the next time someone calls me and they're suicidal, I'm not going to just like ditch them or something, you know? And
Right.
then one of the people from AA, he says, Danny, you have to just let this thing go. So it's been a few months now, and I just had to like, just let it go. And I talked to one of my, I went to UCLA, the OCD clinic, right? And I talked
Yeah.
to Dr. Fusner, who's you can say his name because he's a medical psychiatrist. And he says he turns his phone off at 6:00. And anyone that's suicidal has to talk to the doctor on call,
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like something that's really hard to do. What would you think about a doctor that,
I don't know about that. My shrink in LA, Dr. Sherman,
yeah,
was pretty good with emergency calls, and you
yeah,
could call him if you had an emergency.
right,
There were a couple times I called him where he was like, David, you're obsessing about something that's not an emergency.
uh-huh,
And I would argue back, I would say, no, this is an emergency. I'm calling you. This
yeah,
is an emergency.
right.
If I say it's an emergency, it's an emergency. And he was like, no, obsessing is not an emergency.
What a fucking
Um,
asshole.
well, he was all right, though. I mean,
Yeah,
he did. There were times when it
uh-huh,
was an emergency in terms of my ruminating or whatever, and
yeah,
or being in a pinch, being in a bad situation,
right, right,
and like I literally needed help getting out of this bad situation. And he would call back and he would say like, it's okay. He talked me through it,
yeah,
and here's what we're gonna do or whatever. We come up with a plan,
yeah,
and so he was a pretty good doctor, but there were other things about him that bothered me. And no psychiatrist is perfect. I mean, I think psychiatrists have a tough job because they have to deal with people's psyche. They
yeah,
have to deal with people with the psychology of it all, and that can be a complicated thing. I mean, not that other doctors don't have to,
yeah,
but I mean, when you're a psychiatrist, your job is to make sure that your patient's
uh-huh.
mental health is well. And but I don't know how we got onto this.
But how did David, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you find a difference? Like when I saw, okay, I can mention these names because they're, but I have a doctor, one of my favorite doctors ever, who, I mean, his name is Dr. Kelleher. And
Yeah.
then when I was done with the OCD clinic, do you know who Dr. Kelleher is?
I know him from you talking about him.
Okay, so Dr.
Yeah.
Kelleher
Yeah.
at UCLA, he was the guy that if none of the psychiatrists, if somebody came in there and was schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever, everything, the last resort was Dr. Kelleher. If you can't figure out what's going on, you have to call him, right?
Yeah.
And so they put me, luckily I was in his office, and he became my psychiatrist. Maybe I was a difficult case, I don't know. And I love this guy. And one of the things is psychiatrists are limited because they prescribe medications.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
psychiatrist is like 20 minutes, you're in and out. It's like wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Here's your medication, get the fuck out. But the thing about Dr. Kelleher is he was also trained in some mentalization. Are you familiar with mentalization?
No, I'm not.
It's has to do with, I'm not going to go into it because I totally forgot, but how you're affecting other people, what you're doing. And anyways,
Yeah.
he's a great guy. And then all of a sudden he says, Danny, I'm going to take a month off because I'm sick. And I'm like, okay. And I noticed he was losing weight.
Yeah.
And then Angie would go with me and goes, no, he just works out. And then 1 month becomes 6 months, 1 month. And now it's been a year. And I've been devastated, dude. Like you develop this relationship, this loving relationship with your doctor.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, if they disappear, it could just fucking wreck you.
Yeah.
Have you had like a a relationship with a doctor where you depended on him, or?
No, I've never
Uh-huh.
had a doctor die
Yeah.
on me. I've never had a doctor die on me, but I've had doctors that
Uh-huh.
I'm dependent on.
Yeah.
And when I moved from LA to Chicago and from Orlando to LA for that matter,
Yeah.
I had to find a whole new doctor. When I moved to LA, it took me a while to find Dr. Sherman. And then since I've gotten back to Chicago, I've never really found a psychiatrist that I've been able to stick with for more than like a year. The one that I had that was pretty good, he kind of did the bare minimum. He kind of did just the basics.
Yeah.
Like you said, wham, bam, thank you, man. Like,
Yeah.
just get out and I'll give you your medications.
Yeah.
Well, I was fine with that. But then after a year or so of seeing him, he said, well, I'm taking on a different role. I'm not going to be here. So I'm talking on the phone with my new psychiatrist tomorrow.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Wow,
I'm talking with my
you're
new
waking up
psychiatrist.
early, dude. That's early for Dave, right?
Yep, yep.
What was I gonna say? Maybe I might have to call you, but I can't wake up till like, dude, ever since this virus happened, dude, how do you think, let me ask you a question.